Across the bar, Rocco had tactfully disappeared. The phonograph had run out, leaving us in silence, broken only by the distant sound of the city, cars, voices, the ever-present heartbeat of Chicago at night. I could lie, construct something believable, but Vincent Moretti had already proven he'd see through it, and I was tired, bone deep, tired of running, hiding, pretending. So I told him. Thomas Blackwell isn't just some old man who wanted a wife, I said quietly. He's connected. Boston politicians, judges, cops, everyone who matters answers to him in some way. And when I ran, I didn't just embarrass him. I stole something. Moretti's eyebrows rose. Stole? Papers. Documents proving his involvement in a smuggling operation. Opium from China, coming through Boston Harbor. He was bragging about it one night, drunk on champagne and power. And I realized if I took those papers, I'd have insurance, proof, something to keep him from coming after me. And did it work? I laughed bitterly. I don't know. I mailed them to a newspaper editor before I left Boston, but I have no idea if they ever ran the story. For all I know, Blackwell bought the paper, burned the evidence, and put a price on my head. Moretti was quiet for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Then, slowly, he smiled. You stole blackmail material from a corrupt businessman and used it to escape an arranged marriage. Yes, that's either the bravest or stupidest thing I've heard all week. He picked up his Manhattan, finished it in one swallow. I can't decide which. Neither can I admitted. He set down the glass, and his hand, large, calloused, bearing the scars of a violent life, covered mine where it rested on the bar. The touch was brief, impersonal, but it sent electricity racing up my arm. Here's what's going to happen, Rose Callahan. Tomorrow night, you're going to serve drinks at my poker game. You're going to smile, listen, and report back everything you hear. And if any Boston boys come sniffing around my territory looking for a runaway bride with light fingers, I'm going to hear about it. Because as of right now, you work for me, which means you're under my protection. Understand? I stared at our hands, his dark skin against my pale fingers, the contrast stark and somehow perfect. Why would you protect me? You don't even know me. I know you're smart enough to steal from a dangerous man and brave enough to run across the country with nothing but a suitcase and a prayer. I know you lied on your employment application, but showed up to learn bartending at 3 a.m. without complaint. And I know, his thumb brushed across my knuckles, barely there, that you didn't flinch when I touched you, which means either you're fearless or you're too stupid to live. Haven't decided which yet. Neither can I whispered, echoing his words. He released my hand, stepped back, and the professional mask slid into place. 8 o'clock tomorrow. Don't be late. And Rose? He paused at the door, looked back over his shoulder. Wear something red. It suits you better than fear. Then he was gone, leaving me alone in the Art Deco sanctuary with my racing heart and the lingering warmth where his hand had covered mine. Rocco reappeared from wherever he'd been hiding. Well, he said mildly, that was interesting. Shut up, I muttered, reaching for another bottle with shaking hands. Teach me how to make a French 75. He laughed, but he taught me. And as the city outside exhaled into the hours before dawn, I learned how to mix drinks for dangerous men, how to disappear into elegant furniture, and how to ignore the fact that Vincent Moretti's casual touch had felt more intimate than any kiss I'd ever received. Tomorrow, I'd serve drinks to corrupt politicians and crooked judges. Tonight, I practiced not spilling. It felt like the same thing. I need an answer, doll. His voice was silk over steel. Yes or no, right now. I met his dark eyes, saw my reflection in them. Small, scared, soaked in whiskey and fear. And I thought about Thomas Blackwell, about Boston, about all the men who tried to own me, control me, break me into something palatable and quiet. Vincent Moretti wasn't offering ownership. He was offering employment. A debt, yes, but a finite one, with terms, with an end. Yes, I said, and my voice didn't shake. I'll do it. He smiled then, a real smile, sharp as broken glass. Good. Carlo will take you to Rocco. Training starts now. He waved a dismissive hand, already reaching for another cigarette. And Miss Callahan? Next time you're within 10 feet of me, make sure you're holding a drink you don't intend to spill. Yes, sir. I stood on trembling legs, smoothed my damp dress, and followed Carlo through the crowd. Behind me, I heard Moretti call for another bottle, the expensive kind, and I realized with a jolt that despite everything, despite the terror and the debt and the dangerous waters I'd just waded into, one thought blazed through my mind. Vincent Moretti had looked at me like I was interesting, and God help me, I wanted him to do it again. Rocco DeLuca was 60 years old, built like a brick building, and had the patience of a saint being roasted alive. No, 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 he barked for the 15th time in as many minutes. You shake it like you're trying to murder it, not seduce it. Smooth, strong, control. I adjusted my grip on the cocktail shaker, silver, heavy, already slippery with condensation, and tried again. The ice rattled against metal as I shook, but my rhythm was off, too jerky, and when I poured the concoction into the waiting glass, half of it sloshed onto the bar top. Rocco pinched the bridge of his nose. Madonna mia, you really are hopeless. I've been at this for 20 minutes, I protested, wiping up the spill with a rag. And in 20 minutes, you've wasted enough liquor to pay for a week's groceries. But his voice had gentled slightly. He pulled the shaker from my hands, demonstrated the motion again, smooth, confident, the ice creating a rhythmic percussion. When he poured, the liquid arced perfectly into the glass, not a drop wasted. Feel the weight shift. Listen to the sound. The ice tells you when it's ready. Again. We were in the back room of the Green Mill, a private space reserved for Moretti's inner circle. The bar here was smaller, more exclusive, lined with bottles that probably cost more than I'd made in a year of legitimate work. Art Deco patterns covered the walls, geometric gold and black, very modern, very expensive. A jazz record played softly from a phonograph in the corner, something slow and melancholy. It was 3 a.m. The main speakeasy had closed an hour ago, but Rocco had informed me in no uncertain terms that bartenders didn't keep civilized hours. Mr. Moretti's poker game is tomorrow night, he'd said, shoving the shaker into my hands. That gives me 1 day to teach you everything your fancy Boston finishing school forgot to mention about making drinks for men who can have you killed. Comforting, I tried again. Shake, count, listen, pour. This time, only a few drops escaped. Better, Rocco admitted grudgingly. Now, while you're doing that, tell me why you're really here. My hands nearly fumbled the glass. Excuse me, you heard me. He was building another drink, some complicated thing with 3 different liquors and a lemon twist. His scarred hands moved with the precision of a surgeon. Vincent doesn't do charity. Girl spills whiskey on him. He usually makes her clean it up and tosses her out on her ear. He doesn't offer private employment. So what makes you special? Maybe he liked my face, I said lightly. Rocco snorted. Vincent Moretti has seen more beautiful faces than you can count, and half of them are buried in the ground because they got too clever. Try again. I concentrated on cutting a lemon, buying time. The knife was sharp, professional grade, and for a moment I entertained the dark fantasy of what I could do with a weapon like this if Thomas Blackwell ever found me. He said I was terrible at waitressing. True, but that doesn't answer my question. Maybe he's testing me. Also true, but why? I set down the knife, met Rocco's shrewd brown eyes. You tell me. You've worked for him longer. 10 years, Rocco confirmed, since he was nothing but a runner for his father's organization. I have seen him build this empire from the ground up, seen him make alliances, break enemies, survive things that would kill lesser men. And in all that time, I've never seen him take a personal interest in a clumsy cocktail waitress with a Boston accent and secrets in her eyes. Maybe he's just being practical. I owe him money. You owe him $500. Vincent spends that on cigars every month. If he wanted money, he'd have sold you to one of the brothels or married you off to one of his soldiers who needs a wife. Quick, efficient, profitable. Rocco poured his creation into a glass, slid it toward me. Taste. Tell me what's in it. I sipped carefully. Gin. The good kind. Probably from Canada. Something bitter. Something sweet. Lemon. Gin, vermouth, and bitters. Close. Gin, Lillet, Cointreau. Lemon juice, Kina Lillet. It's called a corpse reviver number 2. Appropriate, given our line of work. He watched me drink. His expression unreadable. You've got a decent palate. Better than I expected from a society girl playing at poverty. I'm not playing. Everyone's playing, kid. The question is whether you know what game you're in. He started cleaning his tools, the conversation apparently over. Tomorrow night, 8 o'clock, wear something nice. Mr. Moretti's guests expect a certain aesthetic. Black dress, pearls if you've got them, heels you won't trip in, hair neat, makeup subtle, nails clean. You're not there to be seen, understand? Your furniture, elegant, efficient, invisible furniture that makes perfect drinks and remembers everything. Remembers everything? Rocco smiled, and it wasn't a kind expression. These men talk when they drink. They brag. They make deals. They say things they shouldn't. And Vincent likes to know what gets said in his presence. So you listen. You remember. And you tell him everything. He paused. Think you can handle that, Miss Callahan? Suddenly, the real job became clear. Vincent Moretti didn't need a bartender. He had Rocco for that. He needed a spy, someone new, unthreatening, underestimated, someone these powerful men would ignore while they played cards and drank and revealed their secrets. Someone like me. I can handle it, I said. We'll see. Rocco gestured to the bottles. Now from the top, Manhattan, old-fashioned, Gin Ricky, sidecar, and French 75. Make them all. Make them perfect. And if you spill a single drop, we start over. I reached for the whiskey. Behind me, the door opened. I didn't need to turn around to know who'd entered. The temperature in the room changed. The air grew heavier, charged with authority. "How's my investment, Rocco?" Vincent Moretti's voice, smooth as the bourbon I was pouring. "Terrible," Rocco replied cheerfully, "but improving. Give me another 6 hours. I might make her presentable." Moretti's footsteps approached. I forced myself to focus on the drink, measuring carefully. 2 ounces whiskey, 1 ounce sweet vermouth, 2 dashes bitters. Stir, don't shake. Strain into a chilled glass. Garnish with a cherry. I slid the finished Manhattan across the bar without looking up. "For you, Mr. Moretti." Silence. Then a low chuckle. He picked up the glass, examined it against the light, sipped. "Not bad. A little heavy on the vermouth, but not bad." He set it down, and I finally looked at him. He'd changed out of his whiskey-soaked suit into something more casual. Dark trousers, white shirt open at the collar, suspenders, no hat. His black hair was slightly mussed, and the intimacy of seeing him this way, relaxed, unguarded, sent an unexpected flutter through my stomach. "You're still here," he observed. "You told me not to run." "I also told you training started now. Didn't expect you to take it quite so literally." He leaned against the bar, close enough that I could see the fine lines around his eyes, the shadow of stubble on his jaw. Most people, when I offer them an opportunity, they spend the first few days testing boundaries, seeing what they can get away with. But you just showed up, started working. "I pay my debts," I repeated. "So you said." His gaze held mine, searching. "What are you really running from? Rose Callahan? And don't give me that arranged marriage story again. I've heard better lies from police commissioners." My breath caught. "Rose? How did you—" "I run Chicago's most successful bootlegging operation. You think I don't have ways of finding out who's on my payroll?" He pulled a folded paper from his pocket, laid it on the bar. My employment application, filled out 3 days ago in my careful handwriting. Rose Margaret Callahan, 24 years old. Last residence, Boston. Previous employment, governess. Father deceased, mother deceased, no siblings. Arrived in Chicago 6 weeks ago on the overnight train with 1 suitcase and $43 to your name. He tapped the paper. "Most of that's true, I'd wager. But there's something you left out." My throat had gone dry. "I left out lots of things. You didn't ask for my life story. I'm asking now." "Why?" The word came out sharper than I intended. "Why do you care?" "I'm just a bartender. Temporary help to pay off a debt. Why does my past matter to you?" Something flickered across his face, there and gone before I could name it. "Because people with secrets are liabilities, doll. And I don't allow liabilities in my organization. So either you tell me what you're hiding, or I'll find out myself. And trust me, you'd prefer the first option." The crystal tumbler shattered against Italian marble, and with it, any hope I had of leaving this city alive. I watched the amber liquid, $200 bootleg whiskey, the kind that came from Canadian ships and dirty cop handshakes, spread across the Art Deco floor like spilled blood. My blood, probably, once Vincent Moretti finished with me. The glass fragments caught the golden spotlight from the stage, each shard a tiny mirror reflecting my stupidity back at me. "I'm sorry. I'm so..." The words died in my throat. Every sound in the Green Mill Speakeasy had stopped. The jazz quartet mid-note, the cigarette girl mid-laugh. Even the illegal roulette wheel in the back room ceased its hypnotic spin. 200 souls holding their breath, all of them staring at the girl who just doused Chicago's most dangerous bootlegger in his own merchandise. Vincent Moretti sat perfectly still in the shadows of booth 7, the best seat in the house, the only booth with exits on 3 sides and a clear view of every entrance. His dark suit was soaked from collar to cufflink. Whiskey dripped from the brim of his fedora, and yet he hadn't moved, hadn't blinked, hadn't reached for the gun I knew he kept in his shoulder holster. That's what terrified me most, the stillness. Miss Callahan. His voice was low, controlled, the kind of quiet that preceded thunder. You're new. It wasn't a question. Vincent Moretti knew everyone who worked in his establishments, and I'd only been cocktail waitressing at the Green Mill for 3 days. 3 days of dodging wandering hands and memorizing drink orders and pretending I didn't notice the Tommy guns hidden behind the velvet curtains. 3 days of keeping my head down and my past buried. Now I'd gone and dumped premium Canadian whiskey all over the man who could make me disappear with a snap of his fingers. Yes, sir, Mr. Moretti, sir. I didn't mean I gestured helplessly at nothing because there was no excuse. My heel had caught on the carpet, my tray had tilted, and gravity had done the rest. I'll pay for it. The whiskey. I'll work it off, I swear. Someone behind me laughed, short, sharp, quickly silenced. Moretti finally moved. He removed his hat, set it carefully on the table, and looked up at me. The light caught his face for the first time, and my breath hitched despite my terror. He was younger than I'd imagined, maybe 33, 34. Dark Italian features, strong jaw, a thin scar running from his left eyebrow to his cheekbone, the kind of scar that told stories in the dark. His eyes were the color of espresso, and they held mine with an intensity that made my corset feel 3 sizes too small. You'll work it off, he repeated, each word deliberate. That bottle cost me $200, Miss Callahan, plus my suit, imported from Milan, another $300. We'll call it an even $500. How much do you make in a week? My mouth went dry. $12 plus tips. So that's... He tilted his head, calculating. Roughly 40 weeks of work, say 10 months, accounting for your tips. He pulled a silk handkerchief from his pocket, wiped his hands with maddening calm. Do you have 10 months, Miss Callahan? It was a test. Everything with men like Vincent Moretti was a test. I lifted my chin, forced my voice steady, even as my knees trembled beneath my drop-waist dress. I have as long as it takes, sir. I pay my debts. Something flickered in those dark eyes. Amusement? Respect? I couldn't read it. Carlo, he said, without looking away from me, get me a towel and tell Santino to bring a mop for this mess. His gaze dragged down my frame, not lecherously, but assessing, like I was a horse he was considering purchasing. You, sit down. I blinked. Sir? Sit. He gestured to the opposite side of the booth. You're shaking so badly, you'll drop something else. And we're not finished talking about your debt. This was it. This was where he'd tell me the real price. I'd heard the stories. Girls who crossed the Moretti family ended up in Lake Michigan. Or worse, working in the brothels he owned down by the docks. I'd run from one nightmare in Boston only to stumble into another in Chicago. But I sat because women like me didn't have the luxury of refusal. The leather seat was still warm from whoever had been sitting there before me. One of his men, probably, dismissed the moment I'd committed my catastrophic error. I pressed my hands into my lap to hide their shaking, acutely aware of how close we were in the intimate booth. Close enough that I could smell him beneath the whiskey. Expensive cologne, cigar smoke, something darker, something dangerous. Carlo appeared with a towel, his scarred face carefully neutral. Moretti cleaned his hands, his neck taking his time. The jazz band started up again, a slow, sultry number that did nothing to calm my racing heart. Around us, conversations resumed in hushed tones. The green mill exhaled, but I was still holding my breath. "Tell me, Miss Callahan," Moretti said, dabbing at his collar. "Why does a girl with a Boston accent and hands soft enough to belong to a banker's daughter end up slinging drinks in my speakeasy?" My spine stiffened. I needed work. Chicago has many speakeasies. Why mine? It was hiring. Try again. He set down the towel, leaned back, and the shadows swallowed half his face. Only his eyes remained visible, gleaming like a wolf's in the dark. "You've been in my establishment for 3 days, and you haven't stolen a dime, haven't tried to sell secrets to the Northsiders, haven't attempted to seduce any of my men for information. You're not a plant. You're not competition. So what are you running from?" The question hit like a fist to my stomach. "I'm not. Everyone in this place is running from something, doll. The question is whether your something is going to become my problem." He pulled a silver cigarette case from his jacket, miraculously dry, and selected one with practiced ease. "So let's have it. The truth. Consider it partial payment on your debt." I watched him light the cigarette, watched the flame illuminate the hard lines of his face. Everything in me screamed to lie, to construct something believable and safe. But Vincent Moretti hadn't built an empire on bootleg liquor and illegal gambling by being easy to fool. So I gave him a truth, not the whole truth, but enough to satisfy. "A marriage," I said quietly, "arranged to a man 3 times my age who liked his wives quiet and obedient. I wasn't interested in being either." He exhaled smoke, studied me through the gray haze. "So you ran." "So I ran." "Family? Dead or near enough?" "The husband-to-be? Still in Boston, presumably looking for me." Moretti tapped ash into a crystal tray. "Name?" I hesitated. Giving names had power. "Miss Callahan," he said, voice dropping an octave. "I asked you a question." "Blackwell, Thomas Blackwell." The name meant nothing to him. I could see it in his expression. Good. That meant Blackwell's reach hadn't extended to Chicago's underworld, which meant I might actually be safe here. Safer anyway. "Blackwell," Moretti repeated, committing it to memory. "And if this Blackwell comes looking for his runaway bride, then I'll handle it." "You'll handle it?" He almost smiled. Almost. "With what exactly? Your formidable cocktail waitressing skills?" Heat crept up my neck. "I can take care of myself." Clearly, his gaze dropped to the whiskey stain spreading across the floor. "That's why you're currently $500 in debt to a man who kills people for significantly less than ruining his favorite suit." My hands clenched in my lap. "I said I'll pay you back." and I said we're not finished discussing terms. He leaned forward, elbows on the table, and suddenly the space between us felt microscopic, intimate, dangerous. Here's what's going to happen, Miss Callahan. You're going to stop waitressing. You're terrible at it, and I can't afford to lose any more inventory to your clumsy feet. My stomach dropped. This was it. The brothel, the lake, the dash. Instead, he continued, you're going to work for me directly as my personal bartender. I blinked. Your bartender? I'm hosting a private poker game tomorrow night. High stakes. Politicians, judges, businessmen. The kind of people who keep my operations running smoothly. They expect premium liquor and premium service. And I need someone who can pour drinks without dumping them on my guests. His eyes glittered with dark amusement. Someone who, perhaps, is motivated to be exceptionally careful. Someone with a debt to repay. I don't know anything about bartending. You'll learn. Rocco, my current bartender, will teach you. You'll work every private event I host until your debt is paid. Premium parties only. No more mingling with the regular customers. No more dodging drunk handsy bastards. You'll be under my protection, in my private employ. Safer. The word hung in the smoky air between us. And when the debt is paid, I asked carefully, then you're free to go, or stay. Your choice. He stubbed out his cigarette. But while you work for me, you follow my rules. You don't steal. You don't spy. You don't sell secrets. And most importantly, Miss Callahan, you don't run. Because if you run, I'll find you. And I won't be nearly as generous the second time. It wasn't a threat. It was a promise. I should have been terrified. I should have grabbed my coat and fled into the Chicago night and never looked back. But instead, I found myself calculating. Personal bartender meant closer to Moretti, yes, but also closer to power, to protection, to the kind of safety that came from being valuable to dangerous men. And despite the whiskey stain and the ruined suit and the debt hanging over my head like a guillotine, Vincent Moretti was offering me something I'd never had before, a choice. Stay, work, be protected, be seen, or run forever.